some mic runners around the room, so as we open it up for Q&A, you can just put your hand up. But before we do that, I just wanted to acknowledge we did receive a couple of questions in the last couple of weeks from some key members of the community, Tammy Meltzer from Community Board 1 and Jan Lee from NUBC, who both wrote into our team asking about points of agreement number 24 and how that's been incorporated to date in the design. So for anyone who's not familiar, the points of agreement were established back in 2019 with City Council as part of the ULURP process, and those are agreements that the city has committed to incorporating as the BBJ project moves forward. Points of agreement number 24 said that the city would consider potential design features to allow the facility to be adapted or future flexible in the event that the jail population numbers in the future go down enough that parts or all of the facility may be decommissioned at some point. So basically, if the jail numbers go down at some point in the future, we no longer need to use the whole facility as a jail. What could we do on the design side to allow some of those floors to be retrofitted or adapted for some other use? So I just want to assure everyone the city takes the points of agreement very seriously. The entire points of agreement document is included in the design build contract. It's an addendum in there as part of the reference documents. We also have language specifically about the future flexibility that's embedded in the contract in both the basis of design and in the design guidelines section, which were developed with input from the community. The way the design team has approached this for the Manhattan facility, the individual jail cells, when they're like the cells in the housing units, are actually being installed as prefabricated units. So what that means is that each one of the floors of the facility is being built as one continuous floor slab, and then the jail cells themselves will be slid in on top of that. So in the future, if one of those floors is no longer needed to be occupied by people who are being housed in custody, the cells themselves could be individually dismantled and removed from the building, leaving one continuous floor slab that would be open and could be repurposed for a future use. So exactly what that might look like and how that repurposing might go would be determined, at a future time by future people. But this has been something that we've been thinking about and including in the design as it moves forward. And I think when we re-meet again in 2026 with the construction team, we can also talk about that in a little bit more detail, and they can show you how that'll work in the construction. And then to kick off Q&A, I also want to ask Aman to come up here. We did have a couple of questions as people were filtering out the open house, again about the height of the facility. So if you haven't visited our model yet, please stop by there. It does show the height of the facility relative to the surrounding buildings. But Aman, could you just describe a little bit again, like how this facility kind of fits into the surrounding context and its relationship to, and its height kind of relative to some of the other buildings in the neighborhood?
I think the best assessment is really, I saw some people engaging with the model, looking at the model in relationship to the other buildings, so that sort of gives you the best sense of the scale and the height of the building. The ULURP allows us to go to 295 feet plus 40 feet of mechanical, so that's the highest part of the building, and then we're stepping down 30 feet from that. We are approximately the same height, or a little bit lower than the adjacent criminal courthouse, so hopefully that starts to give you a sense of the bulk and scale of the facility.
Great, thanks, Aman. So just put your hands up if you have a question that you'd like to ask. I see a gentleman about 4 or 5 rows back with a navy sweater.
Are you all? Thank you for your presentation. I think you're overly optimistic about converting this jail into another facility because there are approximately 7,000 inmates that are currently in Rikers that far exceed the number of beds currently, even with every attempt to lower the jail population. But my question is, what are the contingency plans in case if there was a fire or if there was a riot or evacuation? Is that something that you have any information on?
Sure, evacuation plans are currently under development by the Department of Correction. For security purposes, we're not going to be able to share the detailed evacuation plans publicly, but we will have approved, fully vetted evacuation plans in place before the facility becomes operational. Next question. Okay, I see a woman over on the left side, gray sweater.
Hi, thank you very much. I'm with Children's Rights. We advocate on behalf of young adults on Rikers and within AMOC in the borough-based jails. I had a question about the outdoor recreation space because maybe I don't understand architectural drawings, but it didn't look like it was outdoors. And I understand that it's supposed to have fresh air, but if someone could please explain how it's outdoors, and if it isn't really, is there a way to use different materials? I'm gonna say hurricane fence, but that isn't what I mean. Something to make it actually outdoors and still provide the security that you're aiming for. And I should have started off by saying, thank you very much for all your presentation and for listening to the community the last time.
Great, thank you so much for your question. Is that Jeff? Jeff will be able to speak in more detail to the outdoor space.
So you brought up the idea of using a mesh, and in fact, that is what it is. So, so maybe it appears to be windows. There's a lot of frames because it needs to be secure, but in fact, there's two layers of mesh. There's a security mesh, there's an architectural mesh, and they go together, but that lets through total air and light through that, so there's no glass there. Now, by the nature of the facility, there are floors above other floors, so we don't have total open air, but on the sides, it is totally open and it's all mesh. All the way really down to the floor, to the top.
And how high is it?
18 feet minimum.
Okay, I see a woman in the third row with the white sweater.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for the presentations. I'm Ms. Newton. I'm here with my colleague from the Legal Aid Society. And I first want to say to our community members here present, we do not refer to our community members incarcerated as anything other than that. So let's please be respectful with our language. Also, I have two questions. One of them is for the outer area, what trees are you using to plant, what gender, right? And I'm asking male or female because we know that some trees pollute more than others, and so we want to be mindful of that. Also, I see that in the shower areas, which I'm very proud to see, you were able to separate the sink from the toilet, which is very much progress because that was disgusting. So my question is, since you have separated the toilet seat from the sink, isn't it possible that you could also connect a shower head inside of that cell area so that people can respectfully bathe in privacy? Thank you.
Okay, great questions, thank you. I did receive a couple note cards that also have questions about the street trees. So let's start first with your question about the shower facilities, and then we'll read out a couple questions that go along with your street tree question and have a different design team member answer that. So Jeff, would you be able to speak to the shower facilities?
So, yeah, so I heard what you said about having the shower in the room. We're not currently planning to have it in the room. However, each shower actually is a private stall. So we don't have showers that are grouped together. Every shower has a drying area behind a door, and then a shower with a curtain. So in fact, there's privacy in that, and each person will be able to take a shower individually. So we have eliminated group showers from the facility. So I think at least we've met your part of the way on that request.
I'm sorry, I don't have the mic, but I'm going to speak loud. Thank you very much for that. And for security purposes, will we have security measures in place in those shower areas for our community members incarcerated?
I'm just going to repeat the question here because I don't think the recording will pick that up unless someone is speaking into a microphone. So your question was, would there be security measures in place in the shower areas for people who are incarcerated?
Yes, so there are, and not only so security, yes, and that goes for everybody that'll be in those living units, but also so we're controlling sight lines, like I mentioned before, as far as doors, and that door's lockable, so not anybody can just come in while you're taking a shower. It'll be under the supervision of the people running the unit. Plus, they're also placed in areas that are more discreet, so they're not just out in front of everybody. So everybody, I think, can be more comfortable going to take the shower, feeling safe, and feeling that they're in a secure environment.
Okay, so getting back to your question about the street trees, so your question was whether the street trees would be male or female and how that relates to kind of different types of mess that some trees will make and how we're accommodating that. There was also a question about who will be maintaining the planting area in the White Street Arcade. The short answer to that is that will be maintained by the Department of Correction. They may choose to partner with another agency in the future, but that remains TBD. And then another question about how many trees will be planted and will there be any trees in the sidewalk on the criminal court side. So Autumn, could you come up and give us some answers about the street trees?
Thank you for your question. So we're still refining the planting palette, but yes, I understand your concerns about the street trees, whether or not they're male or female. We all know the female ginkgos, for example, they have those fruits and they smell when they drop. We're definitely not proposing those. We do want to propose as many native species as possible, so we're going to do our best to find out which species we're going to propose as it relates back to the larger city context. And also a lot of the male trees, for example, they flower, and we want to provide year-round interests. So that will be in progress, and we'll provide an update on our next meeting, and specifically which species we're proposing and where. In terms of the number of trees on site, we are proposing replacing what was previously there in terms of street tree count. We are proposing abundant trees in terms of what was previously there for Center Street as well as Baxter. Those numbers have not been confirmed yet, but we are trying to provide as many trees as possible because it's important not only for this community but for Manhattan streetscapes throughout. Was that the last one? Thank you.
Thank you, Autumn. Okay, front row, Alice Blank. Microphone's coming to you.
Okay, thanks. A couple of questions, and thank you as always. First to the architects, I've forgotten who they are, but could you just review for the public what precise changes were made in terms of the 3 or 4 things that we saw? You mentioned less glazing, you mentioned a scale difference in the arcade. Could you just review and summarize with actual numbers or whatever? And did the model show these changes by any chance in terms of?
Thank you. So in terms of the changes that we have instituted, it's the exterior design of the facility, including the public realm and landscape design. The massing that we had shared with you last time that's in the model has remained the same, so that continues to be as we were, which is very different from our proposal massing, but we had already changed that last time and that's what you saw. In terms of what we've changed, you had seen materiality that was green in color previously. That's now been changed to a warm brick inspired material. The scale of that material is new as well. We have also incorporated the undulating facade that did not have happened prior, so that's new as well. We have removed the excessive amount of glass that we had on White Street Passage and then on Baxter Street as well. So we've reduced that glass and again put that warm material in its place.
Thanks for clarifying that. It was a bit unclear.
I had mentioned to Lauren, thank you, that it would probably be really helpful
To have a visual of this at your next meeting and maybe to circulate that as soon as you can so people can really understand what that before and after looks like. And then just on a note, looking forward to next Tuesday, I guess, with the new elections, I'm just curious, did any of the mayoral candidates meet with any of the departments that are involved in this project, OCJ, DDC, to discuss the future oversight, potential changes in plan? Just curious.
So we're not going to speak to that tonight, Alice, or hypotheticals of what may happen with the future administration. But of course, we'll have a lot of meetings with the community, in the new year and after the election to talk about, what's happening. But as of right now, we are staying the course. The program is continuing as previously planned. Nothing has changed.
That wasn't my question. My question is, have any of the mayoral candidates met with your departments?
I cannot say that definitively, so I'd have to check in. We can get back to you on that one.
Thank you.
All right, we have a gentleman in the fourth row back, green sweater.
Hi, my name is John Gordon. Yeah, I had a question about the education and training spaces in the facility, which I didn't see any kind of description of at all. And you know, people, I think we know people are often locked up for a year and a half, or longer at Rikers, and I think the having kind of adequate education spaces, training spaces are just really important, that people don't, you know, just kind of waste away while they're there, that they use it. You know, but back, I have a few questions, but back some years you would see 200, 300, 400 GEDs a year coming out of Rikers, and I just think if we don't pay attention to that, it won't happen. So yeah, I'm wondering if you could talk about what those spaces are like. Are there dedicated spaces for education and training? How big are they? How many of them are there in the facility? Yeah,
Absolutely,
just kind of talk about all that.
So Jeff, can you talk about the location, where are they, how big are they? And then I think Alex from DOC can also elaborate a little bit more on the types of programming that you'll see.
So you're right, and tonight we didn't have renderings of those areas, but in the future we will. And so there's an entire floor, actually more than one floor, dedicated to education within the facility. So we have, I'm going to say off the top of my head, about a half dozen educational classrooms, about the same amount of vocational classrooms, a full library, a horticulture program that's going to be open to the sky, a gymnasium that's also has other physical fitness elements to it as well, including yoga and other areas, chapels. So there's, you know, so spirituality is also going to be addressed at the facility. And so the way that the facility is planned is that through the elevator banks there will be easy access for the folks that are here to be able to get to that programming easily. And so that should increase their frequency of being able to use this. At least that's the goal.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Alex Maldonado, and I work for the Department of Correction. Regarding our educational services, the Department of Education actually provides education, adult learning, as well as young adult learning to our individuals in custody. So that will continue into the borough-based jail program. As far as vocational services, or in vocational programming, we have carpentry classes, plumbing classes, cosmetology classes. So there's a wide variety of vocational programming that we offer in these facilities, and we're designing the jails to accommodate all of those programs. So I hope that answers the question.
Okay, thank you both. I think I've been prioritizing people in the front. Let me call on. There's a gentleman all the way in the back row.
Thank you. My name is Bill Bylowski. I'm a neighborhood architect, and I have two questions for you. The first is, the politics of the ULURP aside, the massing of this building couldn't be more out of place, in spite of the words that we put around it. Why is this building simply repeating sort of the fourth or fifth floor footprint to the sky and not stepping down like every other civic building that's nearby does? And I would recommend that that's something you should study, because it would certainly help bring the daylight and light into the park that this current footprint, if you just take a flashlight to the model, you'll see you're blackening Columbus Park with a shadow. So why isn't the building more articulated at the top? Second of all, the interior space for the incarcerated, the day rooms look like business as usual. I don't see anything other than the one-to-one relationship of a day room to an outside space that is just another cage that is going to do anything to help reduce recidivism. There's a little bit of horticulture you just mentioned up on the roof, but without access to plants and real nature, the biophilia that you are promoting or saying you're promoting on the interior is lip service, in my opinion. So I'd like you to address both of those, please.
Is this still on? Okay. So let's start with the height of the building and the step down. Zaman, could you, sorry, behind me. Could you speak to how what you guys have done to kind of bring the building height down where you can? And also, I think there was a specific comment about casting shadows on Columbus Park. Can you talk about the assessment that your team has done and why we don't think that the building will be casting shadows on Columbus Park? Thank you.
So in terms of the massing of the building, above level 5 is the residential floors, and they are very similar in program. So therefore, they need to stack structurally and mechanically, and which is what drives the form of the building. We very firmly believe that the program and the function of the building should really be informing the form, and they sort of go hand in hand there. We have, as I said previously, broken the scale of the building down by registering White Street vertically up through the building. We're also stepping the building down by about 30 feet, which is, we've been working very hard with our mechanical engineers to keep the space as tight as we can, to step it down towards the north and the east. The building does have a significant amount of programming, which is very essential to support the people in custody within the building. We talked about the education programs, the horticulture programs, mental health programs, medical programs. So there's a lot of function that the building still needs to provide, and we are working with balancing the massing and the programming, and still having it relate to the context, to the civic vertical volumes of the courthouse. In terms of the shadows on Columbus Park is located to the south of the site. So the sun goes from, we all know, east, but it goes south of the building, back down west. So the building will never cast a shadow to its south side. It only casts a shadow to its northwest and east. So Columbus Park, we're very confident, will not be in shadow by the building itself.
And and Jeff, could you now speak to the second part of the question, which is, what are we doing to make this not just business as usual in this facility, but to really design a better, more humane facility for the people in custody?
So I take your comments with real consideration. There's certainly been studies that we've done on it. We have a certain amount of cells that we have to provide at the facility, and it's within that ULURP, but we have a certain amount of square footage that we're limited to. So we have a certain amount of floors we can use, and as we've done the studies, because every person here has a cell and every cell has a window to the outside, they take up a great deal of the perimeter of the building. Now, we are using outdoor rec space. We're also looking for other opportunities to bring in other daylight and to try to vary some of that space. However, I will say that, in fact, in order to get the required number of cells on the building, we are using a lot of the perimeter, and that is why, to your point, it does have that appearance that it is cell after cell. We're continuing to work on the interior design to continue to look at ways to break that up and to enhance that. So it's an element that we're definitely addressing as we go here.
Great, thank you, Jeff. Okay, let's go back over to the front row, the gentleman in the plaid shirt.
Thank you. Tudor Perini, I guess, is the builder of these borough-based jails for the Manhattan Jail. A company headquartered in California, so congratulations on getting 50% of a $16 billion contract and taking your profits out of the state of New York, so good going, New York. So, we were talking about contracts because that was brought up on the debate stage recently. I'd like to know from the city of New York, is it your position that the borough-based jails must move forward because Tudor Perini is in contract with you and you can't break that contract? There's no way for you to get out of it because that was said by somebody who's very favored to be the next mayor. Was he right? Is that true? And if it is true, could you cite where it is in the contract that says this is not possible, we must build this jail, that guy has got to get paid, Tudor Perini? Can you expound on that? And if you do have an answer, I'd like to follow up. Thank you.
Thanks for your question, Jan. So the contract in full was foiled for a while ago by some community members, so I believe that's been made public, and we can share that version with you as well, so you're welcome to delve into that in further detail. At this time, the city is moving forward. If we receive different direction from City Hall, we will address that when that comes, but at this moment in time, we are moving forward with the borough-based jails program as is, and we're not expecting that to change. There's a woman in the back wearing a face mask, second to last row.
There's been many contracts that have been canceled, haven't they? Since 2017, at least 7 city contracts have been canceled. They're not working on them anymore. So it is possible, isn't it? Let's just get that clear because I think it was misstated in the debate. Thank you.
Okay. Woman in the back wearing the face mask.
Rikers is legally mandated to close in 2027. When will construction on this facility begin?
Construction on this facility is scheduled to begin in Q1 of 2026, which is early in the next year. We'll be having a community construction kickoff meeting. Right now we're looking at January, and we're working with the elected officials, local electeds, to set dates for that. So we'll be coming back to the community, we'll have a kickoff meeting, and we'll talk more about the construction schedule and timeline and what the community can expect to see on site during that process. Okay, question, middle, all the way to that side. Gentleman wearing the dark shirt.
Hi there. I wanted to ask about the public realm and some of the renderings that we saw today. There's lots of beautiful renderings with lush landscaping. Who is responsible for maintaining that and maintaining the integrity of all the plantings and also the quality of that landscape? I'm asking this with the context that the former White Street Plaza was a concession for the 1983 construction of the Manhattan Detention Center. And that plaza was originally a public plaza that had also beautiful hand-drawn renderings with street vendors and public art from the community. And as soon as it was built, it became a parking lot to be used by the Department of Corrections.
Great, Henry, thank you so much for your questions. So first of all, ultimately the Department of Correction is responsible for maintaining the facility and the landscape around it. The department may choose to partner with another agency down the line, but that's TBD. As far as the former White Street Plaza being occupied and used as a parking lot, the design team has taken measures to implement in this design to prohibit vehicles from entering that space. There are protective bollards that will be on either end of White Street, both on Baxter Street and Center Street, to prohibit vehicles from entering the space. So this will be maintained, and this is a commitment from the city. This will be maintained as a pedestrian thoroughfare and an open public space for the duration of the facility. I think this gentleman in the second row here has had to stand up for a while.
Thanks. I'm Reverend Jim Sheehan from the Archdiocese of New York. I've done 26 years in City University. I'm going to ask about education, particularly education for the officers. Every day, every other month, we read about suicides, wife abuse, gambling addiction, all of which would be quite common in any of us who are working in an impossible job. So and last month they said good things about it. We're going to look into it. Concretely by contract, how many hours of extra study will the officers be expected to do in this high-risk occupation?
Alex, you want to address this?
Thank you for your question, and I really do appreciate you acknowledging the hard work that our staff members do every single day. So our training is ongoing, right? We have a recruit academy, and our staff members come in and they have received basic training, they receive peace officer training, and a cadre of other required classes. And the focus, though, remains on staff wellness and how to take care of yourself in a stressful and high conflict environment. And so we have a lot of in-service classes related to buildings that are opening up new. Again, we're not quite there yet to plan a new training curriculum for these facilities, but what I can tell you, we are in the process of planning out our new Bellevue facility in Bellevue Hospital, and that requires a 40-hour training curriculum just to work at Bellevue, in addition to potentially additional on-the-job training before they can even go step foot on the ground. So a combination, again, of like staff wellness classes, how to take care of yourself in a high-stress, high-impact, or high-conflict environment, but also, basic training on suicide prevention and de-escalation techniques. So I hope that answers your question a little bit. We're also in the process of building a brand new academy for our correction officers, so stay tuned for more information on that.
Thank you, Alex. Okay, we have a question over here, third row, all the way on the left.
Thank you. I had a couple questions, actually. One of which was related to just seeing how the insides, I had a few concerns. I would love to see, I guess, a little more thought put into turning these into NORCs, so like naturally occurring retirement communities, and just thinking about what we think about in architecture when we're really planning for seniors, just knowing how long people really do tend to stay in our jails and at Rikers, even for just a few $100s just to make bail, because they can't do that in the years and years that they spend. So just imagining the ages that some people are going to get to. So even in their individual rooms, putting in grab bars, the showers that I spoke of earlier, things like that. So just throwing it out there. And the question that I had was actually up about the beautiful public renderings that we have up there of all these spaces. Why is it that all of the humans, as Ron put it earlier, humans, beautiful humans depicted everywhere except for actually in the jail? We don't see any faces. Who are they to you? Whoever created these.
Okay, great. Thank you for your questions. First, I'd like to invite Q from the Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice just to talk about some of the work that the city is doing to speed up the amount of time that people are actually spending in our facilities and bring down the jail population numbers. And then the design team can speak to some of the choices for the renderings.
Thank you, Lauren. Good evening, everybody. The population question is a major concern for a lot of us, and we share that. Apologies for reading off of my notes. I'm representing an office of a lot of policymakers and lawyers and technical experts that goes beyond my design and planning brain. My name is Q. I'm the Executive Director of Capital Projects at the Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice. In quick context, I know it's late, everybody has been patient here tonight. Just to give you a quick context of what MOCJ, the Mayor's Office, is, and it ties into the population question, especially your aging question, which is very valid, and thank you for raising that. We are the city's think tank and coordinator agency for the criminal justice system, and we're the advisor to the mayor, and we represent the courts, the DAs, the defenders, public, nonprofit criminal justice agencies. We work very closely with law enforcement and city agencies and foundations and nonprofits and the public to implement data-driven anti-crime strategies and projects to address current crime conditions, prevent recidivism, and invest in reentry services and transitional housing programs. This all connects to each other. Population question has two components to it. The reason I'm going there is because the increase in population has come up in multiple forms, and that ties into your question as well. There's two pieces to that. One, the population fluctuates, and specifically, I want to look at the bigger picture and clarify this concern that the city's jail population is not limited just to the DOC's operation and the 4 jail facilities that we're building here as part of the BBJ program. As you mentioned, folks are not meant to be in the jail system for this long. However, it's a function of a bigger justice system that has various interconnected components within the system, like law enforcement practices, prosecution, court processes, sentencing, case processing, availability of alternatives to incarceration. All of this together, along with the jail conditions that we're working very hard to improve, all that together creates this bigger justice system that impacts the population numbers. The jails are currently being designed for a range to prepare the city for fluctuations in population as we've seen in the past years, instead of designing to an absolute number. Over the past decades, emphasis on pre-COVID, before the global pandemic, there was deliberate efforts to rethink the policy strategies and expand our alternatives to jail and incarceration and reduce case processing delays, which led to steady decline in the population numbers. However, COVID and the pandemic threw a little wrench in that process, maybe not so little, actually. Unprecedented event like COVID has led to case processing delays and really complicating the court system and the bigger justice system being burdened with that. So that led to longer stays in the jail. Again, folks at different ages, they're not meant to be in the jail system within the jail facilities for that long. However, just as we have in the past years, we're utilizing data and scientific analysis to design strategies and policies to make sure that we can equip our government to pivot quickly when in response to these fluctuations, so we can make sure that we're minimizing these fluctuations without having to sacrifice public safety. The second piece of this ties into diversion programs. MOCJ, like I said, we use a lot of scientific data and analysis to design diversion programs that are go hand in hand with the larger system, and services to lower the jail populations by diverting individuals from jail systems through supervised release programs, alternative incarceration, reentry, population review, which essentially is helping our courts partners to improve their case processing and court operations, to reduce the amount of time that the person is incarcerated and detained in the system. So with that reentry service portfolio, we've invested a significant amount of funds and investments in that portfolio to prioritize programming and services. And hopefully we are hoping to help individuals more than we have before, help individuals who are leaving the jail and prison system with resources and opportunities to successfully reestablish their life in their community again, so they won't be in the system for much longer than they need to, no less than is necessary, but also not longer than it's needed. And also in some other ways, we're looking into employing more precise responses to address specific and special population needs, such as housing, mental health care, trauma-informed therapeutic support, which you see has been incorporated into the design here. So long-winded answer, but that's all to say that the population increase and fluctuation is very much a priority for us, and we're very well aware of the age groups and the aging community that's within the system that's not really meant to be in that system for that long, beyond what they absolutely legally have to be. Sorry for the long.
That's okay. Thank you, Q. We appreciate the very thorough response. Aman, would you like to speak to the second, or Jeff, sorry, the second part of the question about the choice to show the people in custody as silhouettes in the renderings?
Before I do that, I'm going to answer another part of it. I think your question of accessibility, that's what I heard, about people that are in the facility and their ability to be able to recognize that, in fact, you may have an older population, at least certainly it can flex to an older population. So the acute medical floors are one level. They won't be using stairs. There's and we've exceeded requirements for accessibility by code, so we can actually make the facility more accessible for all users, not only for people here, but also staff as well. So the question about the silhouettes, there's been times that we've had renderings in the past that depict people, and we've had some complaints about that. It might resemble somebody and they feel like it might impinge on somebody's privacy. I like the way you asked the question. Might be something we consider in the future as we continue to portray the facility. So thank you.
Okay, great. We have a question. I want to go 4 rows back. The woman with the striped, colorful sweater.
Okay, I am extremely disappointed with the size of and the height of the jail. When I first come to the first workshop, that was my question or my feedback. It seems like it's much taller, and I have 2 issues to ask. I am not an architect, but I know that the area where they built the jail, the Becca jail, is near the subway, near the canal where there used to be a water, whatever. And have you folks did a in-depth study of the foundation good for the building such a jail? And my other question is my concern for the senior home next to the jail. Compared to the big jail, you look at the design, the Hong Chong Park building is like a little baby building, overshadowed fully by the next bigger jail. I know you folks are concerned about the detainees' condition. So how about, especially when building in the future with this mega jail, how would you provide better for the well-being of those seniors? Most of them could be 80s in their retirement. They're supposed to enjoy their retirement, and before during the detention center was demolished, they suffer a lot with the noise and the shaking of the wall. So how would you folks design in a way that they won't be so affected or whatever? You know what I mean?
Yeah, those are great questions. I think some of them, I am gonna turn to the architects in a moment to speak to a little bit about what they've been doing to try to mitigate the height of the building where they can. Again, as Amanda said earlier, they have a lot of program and a lot of requirements they do need to fit into this building, and they are staying within the maximum envelope that they're permitted per the 2019 ULURP. But I know the design team has taken a lot of steps to try to mitigate that height as much as possible. Some of your questions specifically about the impacts on Chungpak during the previous dismantle phase, and I know a lot of folks are concerned about what those impacts might be, upcoming as we start construction. As I mentioned earlier, we are going to have a community construction kickoff meeting in January. We're nailing down the dates and we'll let everyone know as soon as possible. At that time, we will have the builders, the actual construction team, come out and talk to you about their plans and methods for building this facility and how they're going to take care to minimize the impacts to Chungpak as much as possible. So I'm not trying to ignore those questions. They're really important. We know that, and we're going to come back and address those at a future time. Aman, can you speak to some of the design team's work to try to mitigate the height of the building?
And don't forget her question about the water underneath the site.
Yeah, I think those questions about the water underneath and what the team's going to be doing for dewatering and how they're going to safely build the foundation, those are also questions that we're going to have the construction team address when we come back to you all in January. This is the design team is here tonight, but they can speak to the design of the facility.
Right. So in terms of the height of the building, Lauren, as you said, and as we discussed a little bit earlier, there is a significant amount of program that the building has to accommodate to be a rehabilitated facility. We are breaking the scale down of the building by carving it in the east-west direction when White Street goes is registered vertically through the building. We're carving it north-south, so we're creating 4 quadrants that step the building down towards the north, which is towards Chungpak. So the lowest part of the building is towards Chungpak, and it also steps down from the west to the east. So we are mindful. We're also mindful of how we are placing cells and privacy between Chungpak and the cells, so that there is no overviewing between the residents of Chungpak and cells that are located in the facility. Similarly with outdoor recreation, minimizing any sort of privacy concerns.
Okay, we're getting a little close to 9, but I think we have time for a few more questions. Tammy, I know you're eager to ask one. So 3rd row back towards the aisle this side.
Okay, I have 3 questions that I wanted to ask you. On the adaptive reuse, you talked about the removal of the cells, that the cells would be individually. It doesn't seem like there is a thought process, though, on the adaptive reuse for what you're talking about could be there. If you have all of your housing, I believe you said, onto 5 residential halls, that all the residential halls are above 5. In what ways are you creating a building to be able to be adaptively reused, and in what form? So are there separate entrances and exits? What would be able to be adaptively reused, and on what floors? Because just saying that you can remove a cell doesn't mean actually you can do something unless you plan holistically for the building to turn into either space for medical facility for housing those who may need more than Bellevue because we're out of bed statewide and citywide, or any other type of housing. There's no conversation, anything. Just removing a cell didn't give me what I needed. If you don't have an answer today, I'd appreciate it if you bring that to the community board. Secondly, human scale renderings when you come would be great. Nobody really cares about a bird's eye view looking down because we all live on the ground. So when you show, we'd love to see the light studies that actually show what sunlight would look like. For those of us who know what White Street looked like before and how many walkways that we have with overheads, I'm a little suspect that that sun is overly optimistic. So showing something that is a real rendering at human scale with different looks at the light in different seasons, I think could be very encouraging for the community. And lastly, when you talk about looking contextually at the buildings, I noticed that you heavily focused on the north building. The south building is still attached to Chinatown, and unfortunately, it looked like the south building was primarily a very small band of whatever contextual that you're calling, and mostly glass. So again, it's mostly a glass tower on Baxter, and just the shortest parts look to be wood, so if you can address that. And what is that materiality? Because it definitely wasn't brick. It didn't look very much like the buildings surrounding, so I didn't have an understanding of what you meant by brick-like. It looked like wood paneling. I don't know. So I'm just an average Joe girl, so if you could explain that when you come, that would be great.
Sure. Tammy, let's take a pause for a second. We'll address some of these. So regarding the future flexibility, what the potential future uses might be of the facility is something that would be determined, at a future time by a future administration based on whatever future conditions arise at that moment. So the design team is not designing for a specific use at this time, but designing for the building to be able to accommodate hypothetical future uses. We don't know what those are yet, so the design team is not designing for a specific use. As far as your request for additional eye-level renderings, that's certainly something we'll take into consideration. And I know there were a number of eye-level renderings in the presentation, but we'll see if we can provide more at future workshops. And then Aman, could you speak to the materiality question of the contextuality, especially on the Baxter Street side? Thank you.
And the south building.
Yes. So I do actually want to reiterate that all renderings that we shared today is eye level. We very much, taken human scale and gone and taken actual photographs of the actual context in which we are placing the building. So there has been a lot of effort in being able to depict the context and the neighborhood exactly as you would experience it. I really appreciate your idea about showing it in different lights and showing it in different seasons. That's something we can absolutely come back to you with. In terms of the contextuality and how we relate to it, both the north and the south tower on Baxter Street side have the podium, the lower floors that contain the warm materiality. We are still studying what exactly that material is. It is not wood, because we do not want to use wood. We'll have issues with fire safety and code and regulations. Not wood. It is potentially a brick-like material, similar to GFRC or terracotta, made of the same material that brick is made of clay, so it feels part of the same family. So the coming to Baxter Street side, there is a podium that has the warm materiality on it. The floors above the podium in the higher part of the building have the light color materiality, the same as the north tower. That's likely a metal panel that we are working to match with the materiality of the other civic buildings, such as the Supreme Court or City Hall. The glazing changes as you go around the building. The facade, we've designed the facade to be performative, so the southeast gets the most amount of sun and radiation and therefore heat gain for the building. It also gets a lot of daylight, and that comes with glare. So we're trying to maximize occupant comfort. So the glazing and the solidity of the building is subtly shifting as it's going to different orientations to balance that balance between radiation, getting daylight into the building, and mitigating glare.
Great, thank you, Aman. So I have received word from the wonderful people of Surrogates Court who have let us use this facility tonight that they do need to start wrapping up. So we're going to end the Q&A session now. A couple closing remarks. There was a barcode that was on the board. We have a website online, so anyone who did not get an opportunity to ask a question tonight, there's always more hands than we have time to call on. You can provide your feedback online. The online feedback period will be open until November 5th. We will also be emailing out a link to that to everyone tomorrow. So check your email and you can comment away to your heart's content. And I think that's it. So thank you all so much for coming out. We really appreciate everyone's time tonight. We'll see you at the next one. Thank you. Oh, and if you still have note cards, you can come up and turn them into us now. We'll collect those.
If anyone still have note